Good morning. We're going to continue on with working on our chatbot project. We're looking at how we can actually use the chatbot GUI to do a little bit more with it, as well as doing some file saving. And so what we're doing is we're going to add the ability for our chatbot to have some scrollable features, as well as to save and use the text that we have inside there. And to do that, we're just going to go ahead and in our chat panel class, we added a lovely line right here on line 21, the JScrollPane of ChatPane. We have that, so the JScrollPane is a Java Swing component, allows you to put something inside it that you can then scroll through. Makes the user interface a lot easier to read and use as a user, and we can have a little more, so we can actually have more user control and make it easier for us to read. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at that right here. All we have to do for that is we're going to take our chat field, our existing chat field. We still initialize it just like normal. Our chat pane is also initialized just like a regular default Java object. We say is equal new JScrollPane. Where the work happens, we're going to go down here. We're going to go to our setup chat display, and that method looks a lot like we've already had. The big change here, however, is inside our chat display method, we have the same 4 lines we originally had, with chat setting it to be enabled and to be false, not to be editable, because we don't want the user to click on this whatsoever. We want it to be out of their range. But we do want to make sure that there's both word wrap and line wrap, and so we use the associated methods, setting it to be true for those. Well, the big change, however, happens right here in line 59, where we set the chat pane's viewport view to be chat display. So what that does is it takes the actual chat pane right here and it puts the chat area inside it. So we can actually I'm going to be seeing the chat area. It's like a little mini model view controller relationship inside the chat pane. So we saw that already when using a JTable, we could put the JTable inside the chat pane so we can scroll through that. This is that same approach, so we actually have access to it. We're going to do a couple things specifically. We want to be able to scroll through this. And so say, for example, I wanted to dump a large quantity of text inside there. I'd be able to scroll vertically through that as needed. And so I do that with the JScrollPane vertical scroller as needed policy. But I do not want to be able to scroll horizontally at all because, again, I have that word wrap, line wrap feature. So there's no reason to be doing horizontal scrolling across that. And so to make sure I don't have that scrolling, I set the JScrollPane policy on that to be horizontal scroll bar never. So we have those 2 basic setups right there. Now inside my setup panel, because I've already done this right here, I've added chat pane as a viewport view, I set chat display as that. Notice that in my setup chat panel, I do not have chat display anywhere inside here. If I highlight it right here, notice it's nowhere inside my this.add sequence. The only thing that I'm adding for it is the this.add chat pane. So I'm adding my chat pane to it because I want to make sure I add the chat pane itself and not the display area that's inside it. And let's go take a look at how that's going to work. We go over to our design tab inside Window Builder. And as you can see right here, I have my chat pane on the left of my components outline, and chat display is right here inside it. Okay, so I have my chat display is my JText area, and chat pane's inside it. Now, when I use a chat pane or any other JScrollPane, excuse me, I do want to make sure that I specifically assign my constraints manually over here in the properties section. I don't want to try and drag it around over here, because if I try and click on this to drag it and move it, notice that over here on my components list, what gets selected? It's the chat display. And so if I try and drag that around, it's actually going to move what is the information and the constraints for the chat display, not the chat pane. And so when I set up my chat pane, I have to set its constraints manually inside here. And so make sure you do that for yourself. Also notice that I've got it set up so I have this lovely chunk of information. These are all set from here, and they're all aligned from a certain distance across from this. So I have it all vertically aligned cohesively with that. These are all vertically aligned on the right-hand side as well. So I have the west alignment all matching like that. Makes things look a little bit nicer. And so I can have that set and ready to go. And so I have that all set up. Let's go ahead and run this. Now we have the application running. Notice that when I move the application around the modal window, the pop-up stays with it. So wherever I move that, if I move the actual application around, because I've set that up as a modal pop-up window and I've tied it directly to this actual frame right here, the application's pop-up window is also tied to it. And we'll take a look at how we do that as well. But I'm going to go ahead and close that lovely message. It brings us right inside here. And so I have the feature, like we're talking about the idea of saving. We also have the ability to scroll for this. We're going to see how that works to make sure the text itself works properly. And so when I type inside here, and so a message to the user, and I chat with the chatbot, and we say, oh, I have no idea what your message about the user, and then a nice little thing about computational algorithmic thinking. And so we have right here, message users up at the top, and I can scroll vertically down through this. I add another message, more text, and I chat with the chatbot. And as you can see, message users at the top, it scrolls down and adds more text to the end. So my message is being continued on from that. And it keeps on building. It always scrolls to the bottom automatically, no matter what I press using the keyboard right there. So if I go ahead and type another message, yet more Doge, and I hit chat with the bot. And the chatbot says blank, I have no idea what you mean about more Doge. So it has no idea what's going on. And it automatically scrolls down. So I have that building on down all the way through there. Now, I can also make it so it scrolls to the top. So I'm going to do a sample of that. I attached a listener for this right here. And so if I attach a listener to the keyboard and I say, look, other direction, and I press the Enter key. So I say look other direction, and so that's the response to that, because you can see the chatbot says I have no idea look other direction. But look, here's all the previous text that was inside there, and I grabbed all of that and I put it down below. So I can make it so it either scroll and keep the current message at the top and move the cursor so it moves to the top with it, or I can, by doing this, random typing and press the button, it automatically puts it down to the bottom. So I can have it so it scrolls top or bottom right there. It's really not a big code change to make that happen. We're going to go take a look and see how that happens. So go back to code to see that. So in my setup listeners, as you can see, I have two listeners that we're going to be looking at specifically right here. I have my chat button listener and I have a chat field listener. In my chat button listener, so if I listen for the button, I call the scroll text down method. And in the chat field listener, I call the scroll text up method. So we'll go ahead and scroll down and take a look at those. I have some private helper methods, and you notice these are basically the same thing. So in these scroll text up and scroll text down methods, they're basically the same. What we have to do is we just grab three strings. I grab the information from the user as the get text method on chat field on either of them. I grab the chatbot response by sending that lovely bit of information that the user sent into the chatbot checkers method from base controller. Same thing, both lines, 174 and 162. And then I grab the current text out of the display area, grabbing from chat display or get text, or old text being chat display.getText. You can see a clear delineation right there. The difference happens inside here in my set text method. With the set on the scroll text up, I grab the you said person words \n plus chatbot says \n plus, and then the current text. I grab the information, I set the you said plus person words plus \n, so a new line, and then chatbot says, and then the chatbot response from right here in 162, and then I add the original text from the display area, and I grab that right there. So I put it all together, putting my stuff up the top. I then use the set caret position method, which moves the caret, not the one we eat with a like a bunny, or the diamond caret, although it's spelled the same, but the idea of its setting, not ring. Bad jokes, I know. But we use the set caret position 0, which moves the cursor all the way up to the top, so it auto scrolls it for us. The only difference on scroll text down, again, I have those same three lines we just talked about again, but instead I'm going to put the old text up at the top, and then say the you said, and then say the chatbot says, and then I'll set the set caret position method. Instead of passing it 0 to go to the beginning, I grab the end position by calling chat display.get caret position, because it knows where it is after putting that in right there. So that way I can immediately grab that, and again, by default, I blank out the text, making that really easy to go, and I have the ability to scroll that up and down. So again, taking a quick look at that. So when I type up words inside here and I press the Enter key, the listener for the text area will automatically scroll to the top and move it to the top for me. As you can see, the scroll bar automatically moves up here to the top when I type that and press Enter. If I add words to the bottom and use the click of the button, we have add to the bottom and auto scrolls to the bottom for us. And so we can have that work for either way, works really well, and we can have that happen on that. And so we can see two different ways of information going to it, either scrolling to the top or scrolling to the bottom, and all it takes is the set caret position method. So we've got that lovely feature we've added to it. The next thing we have is the idea of using our load and our save methods. Our load and save methods are going to be able to go through and actually get some information and either save it to the hard drive or load from the hard drive. So let's go take a look at the methods first, and then we'll look at the actual functionality of them. So going back to Eclipse, in my file controller class right here, as you can see, we have a couple static methods. We're making these static because the fact that this object, the file controller class, has no need for state. It doesn't need to know about anything inside itself. It doesn't need to keep track of any data. And because it has no need to maintain a state, and it's just basically a helper library, we'll have the methods that go along with it be static, so we can just call them externally. And so let's look at the idea of save file first, the code for that. And so as you can see, save file has a base controller as a parameter, a file name as a parameter, and a contents as a parameter. And what we're doing with this is we're going to make it so that if the file name is not long enough, I have a default file name that I can use that. And so what I have right here, the file name is at least 5 characters long. I'm going to just say the save file is going to be the file name plus .text, making sure the user doesn't have to worry about giving an extension on that. If the file name isn't long enough, I'm going to say that this file name is going to say chats from, and I'm going to use the local datetime.now, getDayOfWeek.name, get hour, and get minute information, so I can actually put together a file name that says when that chat is from. So I can automatically know what chat we're talking about by using this lovely file name if I don't give it a good file name already in advance. I then use a file writer object. The file writer is part of the java.io.file or java.io package. The java.io file writer is designed for writing text that users can read, and the .write method takes a string as a parameter so it can immediately just save it right there. And this is an overwriting method, so if there were any existing contents inside that file, they're wiped out. Now, there are other ways you can actually save. You can append to a file, right to the front of the file, or find a specific spot and write to that spot in the file. But for this first version of using a file writer, all we want to do is go ahead and just replace the file contents. And so we're using that with the SaveFileWriter.write method. Now, because I'm using a file or a stream, I always want to make sure I also have a close action happening, and that needs to make sure that that is specifically part right there, that the file access and the close happen within the try catch inside the try block. Because when I want to actually open a file and do something, in this case right here, when I call the .write and the .close, I have to make sure I have permission and access to those files. I can't simply just go through and write like willy-nilly. I have to actually make sure it's okay to do that. If I don't have the ability to do that, I have to catch an exception. And so we added a method inside our base control class called handle errors that takes that exception and allows us to display that information. And we'll handle that, we'll see how that works in just a bit. If it does work, however, I also have a base controller method saying that the save was successful. This way I know as a user that I was able to save my code properly. This way I know as the user that my message, my chats were actually saved properly. So either way, if I save my message, I get a notification from the application, or if it doesn't save, I get an error message that explains why it didn't work. And so that way, as a user, I know if my message was either saved or not saved to the hard drive. And we'll go ahead and take a look at that in just a second. So to do so, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the chat controller method. We have inside our chat controller, we have our handle errors method we were just talking about. As you can see, it takes an exception. Now this will work with any exception regardless of the one that's thrown. So this will work on file exceptions, IO exceptions, no pointer exceptions, number format exceptions, anything that we wanted to have this linked to. By having the controller class, the one that's in charge of the application, have this method, it can handle all the error handling for the program as a whole. And so I'm using my pop-up viewer class, and I'm using its display message method. And so the first thing I do is I say display message, an error has occurred, and details provided next. So I'm just preparing the user that there was an error. And then finally I say the display.display messages, and I use the current exception.getMessage method. I call that and send that as a parameter so that I know what the error actually was, so I know what happened when it didn't work. And so I can get access to that pop-up viewer class. I have my public chatbot viewer get pop-up, which gives access to that lovely instance, and I return the display, that value that goes along with that. So I go back inside my panel. Again, inside my setup listeners, I'm going to look at my save chat listener now, and it's really, really easy. For my save chat listener, I'm going to go ahead and I will simply grab the text from the text field, input for the user. I'm going to say that as file name. So if there is anything inside there, I'm going to assume that that's what the user wants for their file name. And then I have my file controller.savefile. Because this is a static method, notice that I use the name of the class .savefile. It's not an instance of file controller, it's simply the name of the class. And so we also have that lovely italicized thing right here inside Eclipse telling us that it's also a static method. I then pass it that reference to base controller. That allows the pop-up window to be centered right there on the actual window for anything that goes along with that, and also access to all the data members that we have inside base controller, such as the error handling methods we were using earlier. I then call the file name.trim as the string. So that means any spaces that are before or after I get rid of that, because spaces at the beginning or end of a file name really aren't very helpful. And so I pass that off right there. And finally, I grab the text that's inside the display area. So I can grab all that text and grab it and save it. So let's go ahead and take a look at that and see it in action. So let's go ahead and run back to our program. And as you can see right here, I have my AdWords to front at the top of the file, and at the very bottom I say add to the bottom. I have some symbols right here. We're going to see what goes along with that. So let's take the save button. And I have a save success message. Oh, sweet. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. So this will save by default. I go to my Finder, make a new Finder window. Go to my documents, go to my project inside my morning workspace. So I'm inside my chatbot project for my workspace. And as you notice, I did not type anything inside that lovely method right here. So there's nothing inside that text area. And so what it did automatically is it created a save file based on the day, the time, using the hour and minute, using standard 24-hour notation for that. And so chats from Friday at 14:46.text. Now we can't use a colon in there because a colon does not work for the idea of that. So you can't use a colon in a file name. Just a little problem with operating systems. Let's go ahead and double click on that file. And there's that adds to front. And there is the novels are not reading novels is fantastic. If we look at this, hey look, there's that reading novels is fantastic. I have a couple squares right here, but because Unicode is properly handled inside the text editor automatically, we can make Java handle inside the JText area. You just have to tell it that it knows what's going on. But we have that lovely little information right here, saved right inside that text file. It looks perfect. And so we have that information automatically saved directly to it. Wonderful thing we can do. So we can actually save our text files right there. It says the entire text right there. If I go through and I add some information here, so it's like new words, and I hit chat with the bot. So I have no idea what you said in new words. Definitely not inside here right now. But I'm going to choose save on this. Again, leaving that blank. Save success. And oh look, there's chats from Friday at 14:48. Because it was not the exact same minute, I have a brand new file, same exact contents, but look, there's new words, last word on there. Now, if I were to go through and actually give this file save, that's something that we wanted to keep this as, so we'll name YouTube inside the text file right here and click save. Save success. So I now have youtube.txt, and I'm gonna go ahead and add some information. So I'll add the text, more videos on YouTube soon, add that to it, so it's right there on the top, and I'm gonna go double click on youtube.txt. As you can see right here, no mention of YouTube on there. Type in YouTube, hit save, successful. Because I left YouTube inside that save thing, I had that more videos on YouTube soon. When I hit save, it automatically loaded that on there and it replaced the original youtube.txt. So if I use the idea of this right here, and I can tell that specifically different, I'll delete everything inside youtube.txt and I'll say deleted and a smiley face and I'll save that. So clearly youtube.txt has been deleted. I've taken everything out of that. I'm gonna go into here, we'll close that, and I'm gonna go right here and add to file and hit enter, and I'm going to type in YouTube and hit save. Save was successful. You can see right here that the save time was changed on that. I double click on that, it no longer says deleted, I have that add to file. So everything went in there that I just put in there has replaced it. So if you're using that .write method, it is a destructive method. Anything that was inside there will be deleted. So we want to make sure we actually keep track of that in a nice effective way, but we'll talk about that another time. So we're going to go ahead and we can delete these files. We don't need to keep them. So let's go take a look at how we are going to load a file as well. So we're going to go back to File Controller. We're going to close out the Save File method and look at the read file. In our read file, it looks a lot the same. We're going to use a scanner object. Notice that we have on our read file, though it's also a static method. However, this one returns a string and takes a controller and a string as a parameter. So we have that reference so we can get access to base controller's handle errors method, is why we're passing that as a parameter right there. We also still have to use a try catch inside this. So the try catch on this one, we're going to use the scanner object. We're using a scanner instead of with system.in for keyword input, we're going to use a scanner, pass it a new file, using the file name that we select as a string parameter right there, so we can grab that. And as long as that file reader has a next line, I'm going to say file contents plus equals file reader.next line. And then because next line consumes that enter press, I'm going to add in a \n on top of file content so I can read the original files back in on that. And then I'm going to close the file. Again, it's very important that inside the try catch, anytime you're using a file or a stream, that you close that file or stream as well. Now my catch statement this time has two different catches. I have two different possible exceptions I could be throwing on this. I either have an IO exception that could happen, or I have a null pointer exception. And those exceptions are handled differently. So I have an IO exception, and I pass that IO error to handle errors. If it's a null pointer exception, I have that passed to handle errors, passing it file error. So one of those two exceptions will be thrown if there's a problem, and I have it so I can handle that as needed. So let's go ahead and see how that's used over in Chat Panel. In Chat Panel, we go again inside our Setup Listeners. I have my Load Chat button, and my Load Chat button, I'm going to grab a file name, and I'm going to use the user input field.txt to grab that information. And then I'm going to call saved as a file controller.read file. Again, I'm using the static method right here, so I call the name of the class .file name, passing a reference to base controller and that file name variable I just created. And then I'll replace the display with whatever I grab from that. So let's go look and see how that works. So we're going to go back to our application. And so we have our contents right here. And I'm going to use YouTube because I deleted that file. It no longer exists. As you can see, there's no longer a YouTube file in here. And I'm going to choose load. An error has occurred. Details provide next. Oh, I don't have that right there. Uh-oh. YouTube.txt, there's no such file or directory. So even though it doesn't exist, it doesn't crash my program, it simply handles that error inside with this. I say okay, and look, my text is blank. I have my lovely bit of information that happens with that. I'm going to go ahead and save that now. Okay, save success. As you can see, I have a file name this time. I have chats from Friday at 14:53.txt. So we'll type that in right here. I don't have to type in the .text because it's automatically in there. I could write a little method to exclude the .text from there as well. I'm going to choose that to just choose load. It automatically loaded it up. It's all right there. It automatically reset it. It didn't cause an error or anything like that. Let's just make sure that actually worked properly. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that out of there and add some more words. And as you can see, I added a whole bunch of stuff to that. I have lots and lots of stuff inside here. My scrolling has quite a bit, but I'm going to go ahead and add in the information that was inside there from chats from 14:53, that 253 file, which is different from what I have right now. And so I have that usetSD right here at the top. I'm going to choose load. And as you can see at the very top, I have YouTube now at the front. There's a definite change that loaded those original files back in and replaced the existing contents with that. So my load file will load what was originally inside this lovely chats from 1453.txt, that content right there, and it puts it inside here. As you can see, the lines are separated out as they are just inside the file. Again, the Unicode display isn't set up properly inside my text area yet, so I don't have that showing quite as nice as it could, but it looks just like it does over here. If I were to go through and change it so it doesn't use that \n, all this would be collapsed into one single paragraph when I read it back into this, but we can do a better job than that, and so we do. So just to review what we've done, we have in our chat panel, we added the load chats button and the save chat button. We added functionality of both of those so it can load and save information. And we did that using the idea of our file controller, which has two static methods, save file and read file. The save file grabs information and either saves it with the file name that's specified or creates a file name based on the current date and time. Our read file method grabs the file that's specified as a parameter, opens that up. If not, it just blanks the screen out and gives us that right there. We have our chat panel has an update so it can using scrolling. We use that with the idea of using a JScroll pane. We use the JScroll pane by making it so that we have the scroll pane have as a viewport the chat display and assigning a scroll bar policy for vertical and horizontal as needed. And then we just, instead of adding the chat area to the display, we simply added the chat pane instead, making it so it can have that available. I have also a little tooltip text right here so I can say a name for the file so you can give the user a reminder as to what needs to go for that, and that shows up as a quick little highlight for that. And so we added it so we have the ability to both load, save, as well as have scroll in the text, and so we can add some features to that. As you can see, if we take a look at the actual application, we're going to be adding features for searching Twitter and sending tweets next. And so that's what we want to start looking at, is how to use the Twitter API using Java to actually talk to and use Twitter on that. Thank you and have a great day.